meeting in order. I'm going to do a roll call this time. Mayor Pro Tem, are you here?
Here.
Councilman Reinhardt, you here?
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Spears, you here? Okay, Councilmember Waddell, you here? Councilmember Andrews, you here?
Here.
Councilmember Joy, you here?
Here.
The chair is here, everybody's here and accounted for, and at this time, we're going to open up the meeting and turn it over to our city manager, Ms. Hall, in regards to our strategic work session for November 17, 2021.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We are happy to have you here this morning
Recording in progress.
to really focus on first a recap of how we ended FY25. We will then take a look at what we are expecting for FY27. And then as we move through the morning, we'll talk about a compensation philosophy and some of our historical issues that we have had with recruitment and retention over the past year. We'll take a look at our most recent community survey results, and then we will wrap up after lunch with what we're calling a council priority exercise, which will get you all up and moving, hopefully generate some discussion about council priorities. So with that, I will first turn it over to Martha Wayne, our finance director, who is going to give a year-end report on FY25.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council.
Good morning. Morning.
This morning, I'm going to be reviewing the preliminary financial statements for fiscal year 2025. The financial statements, I'm calling them preliminary because the city is still in the process of undergoing the external audit. As a result, excuse me, I can't talk this morning. As a result, the financial numbers are considered unaudited. At this point in time, we are pretty far along in the external audit process, and I don't anticipate any significant changes to the numbers that we are going to be discussing. The slide that I'm starting with is a preliminary slide of the summary of the general fund and audited results. This slide reflects the adjusted budget compared to the actual revenues received and actual expenses for the fiscal year. When you're reviewing the slide, you'll notice that our fund balance decreased by approximately 3.8 million during fiscal year 25. We had actually planned to appropriate a larger amount of fund balance, so this is actually good news, and I will discuss that a little bit more further in the presentation. Another item that I was going to discuss is whenever you're looking at the total fund balance here, you'll notice further along in the financial statements review, I'm going to be reflecting a different number. And the number that is shown is the total fund balance. The fund balance is comprised of various categories that I will discuss a little later. The slide that you're looking at right now is focused on revenue. It shows the general revenue budget versus the actual revenue. I am not reflecting the appropriated fund balance in these slides. You'll see that property tax exceeded budget by approximately $666,000. Another reason for the increase in our revenue, this is an extremely difficult number to budget, but it's interest earnings. So our interest earnings came in approximately $1 million over what we anticipated. And if you're wondering, our average interest rate that we earned in fiscal year 25 was 4.36%. In total, revenue came in over budget by approximately 3.3 million for the general fund. Now I'm going to be moving along to general fund expense. Total expense came in under budget by approximately 3.8 million. A portion of this, actually a large portion of this, related to purchase orders that we had actually entered into during fiscal year 25, but the work had not been completed. So we are moving that budget forward to fiscal year 26, and that totaled approximately 2.2 million. I mentioned on one of the earlier slides about appropriated fund balance. During fiscal year 25, we had anticipated using approximately 11.9 million of appropriated fund balance. However, in the end, we only needed to use 3.8 million, so that's really good news. Next, we're moving forward to the various fund balance categories. One of the first categories I'm going to discuss is non-spendable. This is the amount that cannot be spent because it's not in a spendable form. So if you're wondering, examples of that would be prepaid expenses. So that it's assets that we have on the books because we're planning to incur the expense in the future. It just hasn't taken place yet. We also have restricted fund balance category. Restricted fund balance, they're restricted by a third party. So that means the council cannot touch those funds. It's limited to a specific purpose and it's defined by someone else, whether it be for a grant. A grant would be considered restricted funds. And for the state of North Carolina, something that you see that a lot of other municipalities and states don't have is stabilization by state statute. This is a required calculation that restricts a portion of the fund balance for things that we have already obligated. So this would be where like the purchase orders that we entered into in fiscal year 25 that had not actually spent yet, that is considered in this portion of the fund balance category. Our next category would be considered committed funds. These are funds that have been set aside for a specific purpose. And this is actually done through city council action. So an example would be public safety. So this would be, for example, committed for law enforcement separation allowance. For example, if we commit funds for debt service, and those are funds that we're holding for future debt payments. Okay, now we're moving forward to assigned. Assigned is the money that we have set aside for a specific purpose that's neither restricted or committed. Examples of this would be subsequent years expenditures. So those are funds that we have actually kind of set aside to budget the future. So at fiscal year 25, when you see subsequent years expenditures, that's money that we've appropriated in the fiscal year 26 budget to balance it for one-time expenses. So whenever we're using fund balance, we always want it to be for a one-time expense that's not reoccurring. And then last, we see unassigned fund balance. This is what you hear the most about because this is where we can actually turn to whenever something arises during the year. Okay, so this just kind of shows a comparison breakdown between the general fund balance categories for fiscal year 24 versus fiscal year 25. Right, next, what I was going to do is I was going to actually discuss our fund balance policy for the general fund. So the city's policy is to maintain an unassigned fund balance equal to 20 to 25% of the operating budget. For amounts that are in excess of the minimum of the budgeted expenditures, we can appropriate that for one-time expenses. Additionally, if the amount becomes over 30%, council can actually choose to move that excess reserve to the debt service to help cover future debt payment needs. Just
So,
one.
Are we gonna get a, and I apologize, I haven't read it, but are we gonna get a, kind of an outlook of what our debt position is specific to this building and the acquisition?
I have the variable rate portion with me that I can discuss, and if you have additional questions, I can see what those are, and if I don't have the information with me, I'll get them to you.
Yeah, just when you're looking at from macro level, looking at, moving anything over 30% to debt service and buying down debt, which we've done a good job of, I think it's good to have a kind of a picture of what our our debt position is, variable rate or not.
Okay, yes. But yes, I do have the variable rate, and I will tell you the good news with the variable rate interest is we are planning to have that paid off before the end of the fiscal year. And so that is a lot sooner than we anticipated, and a lot of that has been a result of council, whenever we sold one-time parcels, putting that money towards the variable interest rate debt.
Hold on.
Okay, so I mentioned,
Stop you at the 20 to 25%.
yes, sir.
Who decides? I mean, 20 or 25 is a lot of money. And we've, I know from the 80s to like the late 90s, we went without any hurricanes. And an old man told me one time, he said, the year you go without, so you're closer to having it. And we had 2 in 1 year, 35 days apart. Spend a lot of money cash cleaning up our streets. I don't want to get caught.
You're stealing Martha's thunder.
I was about to say that the very next time.
Right ahead, Eli.
You were right on point.
Okay.
So, actually the.
And you point out.
Yeah. About time, isn't it?
I know.
I was about to say, are you sure he didn't look ahead? So, the next slide, what I wanted to do is, this is actually reflecting the past 11 years of fund balance, and it shows the reflection of how fund balance moves up and down. You'll notice at the bottom, I have a bullet that talks about various hurricanes that have impacted our area, as well as the pandemic, which obviously no one saw coming. Whenever you're looking at the slide, it helps illustrate how our fund balance kind of goes and dips down anytime one of these unexpected events happen. Now, one of the things that we have been fortunate in the past has been that FEMA, typically they'll cover 75% of our expenses related to, say, for example, when a hurricane hits, if we follow the necessary procedures. And we've been very fortunate that the state of North Carolina has chosen to cover the additional 25% that we would be out.
At some point in the future.
That is exactly what I was going to point out. The 25% is not guaranteed. So even though we have been fortunate and it's been covered in the past, there's no guarantee that we're going to receive that funding in the future. Additionally, one of the things, the reimbursements, I know the western part of the state has kind of seen this. Some of the reimbursements from FEMA have actually slowed down. So in the past, you'll notice with some of the smaller hurricanes, you don't see that dip down in fund balance, even though a hurricane was reflected in that year. The reason for that was we were able to get the information submitted into FEMA, and FEMA quickly turned those funds around to us. So even if we follow all the steps, we submit the information, there's no guarantee on how quickly we'll receive the funding back. And so that's why, especially whenever you're in a prone area like City of Wilmington, New Hanover County, and you're susceptible to hurricanes, you know, I recommend having a stronger fund balance so that if we need to turn there for an emergency, like I said, no one saw the pandemic coming, or anything just unexpected that arises, this is a place where we can go to look to kind of help us get through that.
So can you repeat the answer to the question of that window 20 to 25?
So the 20 to 25, that's really something that we get comfortable with. It's a policy that was established. So it's a policy that can change. I will tell you with, you know, coastal areas, we do like to be on the higher side just for the reason of potential events that are coming through. So,
But-
I mean,
but
it is
where it falls within that window.
our policy. We
I
are
I
currently,
understand the policy is 20 to 25, and Mr. Rivenbark asked about who decides where it is within that.
council.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's part of the budget process. So, right now, we ended the year at 20.27%.
How much?
25.27%. And so it's really council's choice whenever you're going through the budget process, if you choose to use funds and appropriate funds. Now, one of the things that I will point out is we have already appropriated a little bit of funding that we were anticipating receiving having kind of in our pocket at the end of the year. And part of that was for like the radios that we incurred. So we have, even though we're ending the year at 25.27%, we have already appropriated, I think, a little over $1 million. Well,
For the rest of,
sir,
I would pay for the rest of the radios. We appropriated.
Debt.
What we borrow.
We borrowed, I think it was a little over 2 million. Then we took some funds out of the fleet fund. So I think we took approximately 6 million out of the fleet fund. The limited obligation bonds that we're going to be issuing in the spring, it was around 2 million that we're going to include there. And then out of the general fund, we took approximately a little over 900,000.
The only reason I drilled down on that hurricane thing is, Florence was devastating. These others were bad. I'm not down, I live here. I've never left during a hurricane. So I've seen the damage that they can do. But when you have the magnitude of the two that we had in 96, we had just finished our final sweep on Bertha, and then here comes Fran. And the First Baptist steeple was laying across Market Street. I mean, it was devastating. And these, I call them cowboys, these guys that come to town, and we try to have contracts with them. But if you're not ready to pay those guys right on the spot, they'll go to Elizabethtown or they'll go to Moorhead. They sue me if I break a contract. So I always worry about coming up short. And I know that sounds, I don't know what it sounds like, but I just worry about that because when you got to keep your roads clear and fix other things. And with the pandemic, and that was, like you say, and this city did not furlough one employee because we were prepared. County did.
Don't we have a pre-position contract for the storm?
Yeah.
We do have certain pre-position contracts in place that we can turn to. And that's one of the things whenever you're in a coastal area that we really kind of try to do.
Is that bid every year or is that contract set for 5 years? 5 years. Okay. Same contractor that we've used before or the one that was here for Florence?
We've had the current one for at least 2 terms.
Does a pretty good job.
Correct.
And have y'all figured out in some of the areas where y'all used for lay down?
Yeah, I was gonna say we're running out of
Where would that material, I'm sure y'all pre-position those areas now.
A lot of those places are going away,
Yeah.
but they have had longstanding agreement with American Property Experts, Sunnyvale Drive. They also have another site just outside the city off of North Carr. I can't remember the name of it, but so those are the 2 locations that they haul to, and then material gets ground and repurposed.
They do in Florence, how many lay down areas did we have identified?
We had 4.
4. That was just in the city, or was it the entire county?
That's
That's
just
in
for
the
us.
city.
Wow.
Two of those sites are now, well, one of those sites is now not available.
And I think Hurricane Florence, another thing that taught us is it doesn't matter the category of a hurricane, because I'm also from the area. And, you know, a lot of people, whenever you're from the area, you might think, okay, category 1. But Hurricane Florence, I think, showed everyone in the area that it doesn't matter the category.
And we had the wettest year on record just prior to it. So it all added up.
Yes.
I told Laura I had no questions and I've got 5 already. I'm sorry. Going out, answering some. All right, so that fleet fund, I'm gonna jump back to that fleet fund that we paid for the radios. Paid
Yes, sir.
6 million out of the fleet fund,
Yes, sir.
but the adopted budget for 2026 for the total fleet fund was 12 million. So we took 50% of that fund.
What we do with the fleet fund, I don't have the exact numbers with me. I can get the exact numbers for you. But we have, finance maintains a model of the fleet where we're looking at the outflows that we anticipate as well as the inflows that are coming in. And so we did kind of similar to what we do for the general debt issuances for the city as a whole.
Okay.
And when we reviewed that and we looked at what we felt like our future expenditures were going to be, especially looking very closely at the next 5 years.
Yeah.
We did not have any concerns with pulling that amount of funding out.
Okay.
So, and we did have discussions with our fleet manager, and like I said, it's one of the things similar to our general city debt model, where we're always evaluating, making sure that we have adequate kind of cushion in there just in case something comes up.
And,
That fleet fund is the entire fleet for the city of Wilmington, all of our vehicles, including public safety or not,
Yes.
The fire is separate.
but WPD is included.
Yes, sir.
and if you'll recall, the intention had been to replace the radios at FY 27. And so that had been modeled previously as part of that fleet fund. So it was really just pulling money out a little early.
We think we recoup the fleet's 27, or we don't need it.
We won't fully recoup so much as we won't need it because we've been expecting to do those.
And I will say, I don't know if you're referring, but when we brought forward the radio item, that was a portion that was identified as portion that was going to be utilized in the ordinance. So it's not reflected in this.
It's in addition to what's in the budget. So the number in there is what we budgeted for fleet. And the radios, when we brought them, there was an additional budget ordinance that appropriated the fleet fund then. So we're not taking half of the fleet fund you see.
Yeah,
in
but the
budget.
fleet fund for FY 26, so we're doing the FY 27 first budget workshop for there. So I mean, you would kind of anticipate, because it was FY 25 was 13 million for a fleet fund, and then it adjusted at 17 million, and then we adopted 12 million. So you kind of would anticipate, at least I would, that it would stay relatively the same.
And it will,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and we have already kind of,
Plus, we're pulling that 27 that we already expected to spend to basically replenish the fleet.
yeah, so what we do is our fleet manager kind of keeps a spreadsheet that shows future expenditures.
Yeah.
He has discussions with the department. And you'll see that on one of our future slides where kind of trash trucks, recycling trucks are kind of considered as part of enterprise fund. But what we're doing is we're always having conversations with the department, seeing what their potential needs might be. We are also aware of kind of like the replacement model that we keep in place. And so we're keeping a close eye on what we know is coming. And then we don't let that amount get below a certain amount just in case something unexpected comes up. Because we want to make sure, obviously, a
Needs
need
to
is
be
there,
yeah.
we've got it. Any other questions at this point?
Keep going.
Okay. All right. So we are moving forward to enterprise funds. So this is a summary of our major enterprise funds. This reflects the adjusted budget compared to actual received and actual expenses. It shows the total fund balance increases and decreases. You'll notice for stormwater fund balance increased by approximately 965,000, recycling and trash increased by approximately 1.6 million. Our parking fund decreased by approximately 87,000, and our golf fund decreased by approximately 408,000. Okay. I'm gonna, once again, this is the total fund balance, so I'll go into a little bit more detail later on. So the slide that you're looking at right now is focusing just on revenue, and it's kind of showing how we performed budget to actual. So the amounts on the charts, I'm not including the appropriated fund balance and the budgeted amounts, just so we can get a better idea of the difference of the operating revenue received and what was budgeted. You'll see that in total, it's difficult to see this on the slide, but in total, our revenues exceeded the budget by approximately 2.2 million. But of that, 1.4 million actually related to interest. We had a great year as far as, interest earnings. We do the best we can on estimating interest, but it's similar to sales tax where we don't have a crystal ball, so there is some fluctuations there. Our next slide is looking more at expenses. It will show budgeted expenses compared to actual expenses. Approximately 1.4 million of the reason why our actual expenses came in below budget was just because salaries, and some of that was just the time it takes to fill certain positions, different things like that, well, which I know will be discussed later today. All right, so I'm moving forward to our enterprise fund unassigned fund balance policy. So the city's policy is to maintain a minimum unassigned fund balance equal to 15 to 20% of the respective fund operating budget. Once again, any amounts in excess of this amount can be used and appropriated for one-time expenses. Now, whenever we look at this next slide, you're going to see some higher percentages, and you're going to be wondering most likely, why are those percentages so high? Enterprise funds work a little bit different than the general fund. So not only is this fund balance covering potential capital projects that are going to be moving forward in the future, capital purchases, like I said, the recycling and trash fund, that's where we're setting aside some potential funds for future equipment needs. But this also includes some operating expenses. So that's where one of the big differences between the general and the enterprise, because an enterprise fund kind of works as similar to a business, so it's supposed to be self-sufficient. And essentially with the enterprise fund balance, and I know I mentioned capital projects there, we actually do not take the funds out of the enterprise operating fund and move it to the capital project fund until we have appropriated those funds. So even though we know a project, we want to move forward with it, we're not going to be moving those funds until we bring it towards y'all to appropriate the funds. We know the amount that's going to be needed for the project, etc.
Let's talk about recycling real quick. Dave, on the recycling, I know that at one time with the facility out on 421 was issues in respect to how they were, getting that trash, where it was going and how much was being purchased by, I guess, China or whatever. It was costing us a significant amount of money, was it not? I know it's a complicated situation, but
The market has changed significantly. We updated our contract that we have with the county for disposal at that facility. The county recently re-upped their contract with Sunoco, the vendor that operates the facility. And if you look at the first 10 years of how we worked with them versus how we will progress forward, it's vastly different.
in a better way or worse?
I would just say it's a reflection of the market.
Okay.
So what does that mean?
And that we use a term called the WAP, the weighted average price index for all of the different commodities that get recycled in that facility. And when the WAP reaches a certain level, going down, that's worse for us, right? Because it's costing them more to process it and then find somebody to buy it.
And then they charge us more.
Correct.
Okay.
So right now, the WAP is on a downward trend. And that means the price that we're paying per ton is more. The other factor that weighs in there is contamination. People putting things in the recycling that don't belong there, plastic bags, Christmas lights, garden hose. I mean, who knows what it is, but all of that increases the operating expense at downtime. It's as much as 15 to 20% of the volume. And so they weigh that factor into the entire operating cost model that they run. And right now, it's not a very good market for the commodities, and it's costing us in terms of tipping fees every time we take a truck over there.
If everybody could work a half a day like I did on that recycling center, they'd never think to be real particular about what they put in
I
that
agree.
blue can.
So right now, are the citizens that, our customer base, are about 100% almost? Or I know there's volunteer.
Within the 32 odd thousand that we have, we're probably in close to 80% participation.
That's good. And the county doesn't have.
The county has drop-off centers.
Yeah.
But if you look at the volume that goes into that facility between the city and the county, we're still probably only 35 to 40% of the volume going into the facility. Because they're getting it from other counties, you know, the waste haulers, all of these, like down at Old Beach, for example, they have drop-off facilities down there, and they bring the roll-off containers in.
So they're bringing it all to the same facility.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Right, Dave, one time we had talked about putting a label or something on the trash can. The recycle bins to help people understand what they're supposed to recycle and not. Whatever happened to that?
We haven't moved forward with a label on the cans. We actually talked just recently about trying to get folks to place their carts correctly and switch to the
Right.
ASL trucks. That's one that we're working on right now.
Okay.
Number one thing is people putting plastic bags in everything because it's plastic, it's recyclable.
Right.
And it screws everything up.
Beyond the labels, what are we doing as far as education?
As much as we can, we're trying to, compliance is an issue. If we see too much contamination in a cart, we will tag it and try and allow the customer to correct it before we actually go back and tip it. We have other outreach and educational materials. Our staff, when they answer the phone, they ask, we give them information when they call and say, wow, my cart not tipped. They'll communicate, correct disposal. So it's an ongoing thing. We try and take every avenue that we can to push that message out.
but overall, it is helping the life of the landfill.
It is helping the life of the landfill, yes, sir, absolutely, but it's still a fraction.
Sure.
Is there ever money taken from one enterprise fund? I know years ago, the water and sewer department borrowed money from one of the enterprise funds and it was paid back.
So there are limited ways you can do that. That is, but it's something we don't like to do. But there are limited ways where that is allowable. It is something where the local government commission doesn't necessarily like to see a lot of transfers between, where the general fund or another fund is relying on an enterprise fund. So it's very limited situations, but there are certain cases where that is allowable.
Thank you.
Right, then the last slide that I have for you this morning, this is actually showing fiscal year 25 housing expenditures. So this is what was actually spent during fiscal year 25. This does not take into consideration like future projects. So this is actual expenditures. You'll see the largest number at the top is pass-through funding. This is money that was passed through the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency. And the funds actually went to Starway Village for the project that recently opened. In fiscal year 25, the city was awarded $894,587 of CDBG funds, which are reflected in the federal entitlement line. So we spent 851. We actually received or was awarded 894. You'll notice at the bottom there are carryover amounts that I'll get to in a few minutes, but that's essentially showing money that is rolling over from previous years into future years for potential to be available for projects. In home, the city, in home, the city was awarded 568,783 in fiscal year 25. General fund, for fiscal year 25, we appropriated approximately 2.3 million in funds. Those are from the previous 1 cent, of property tax revenue that can be used for affordable housing. The funding is typically used for gap financing, home ownership assistance, and rehabilitation programs. I know if you'll notice at the very bottom, there's a small amount that kind of reflects the carryover amounts that were not spent as of fiscal year 25 year end. So you'll see for CDBG funds, we're carrying over approximately 360,000. For home, we're carrying over approximately 1.3 million. And for the general fund, we're carrying over approximately 3.9 million. So those are funds that are available for use in fiscal year 26. Some of that actually might not be available at this point in time because we have been kind of looking at various projects and stuff. I know that Rachel and her group have been talking to various organizations. So even though I'm reflecting that amount, that might not be what's actually available today. So that is my high-level review of the financial statements for fiscal year 25. Once again, these are unaudited numbers. However, I do not anticipate any significant changes whenever we get our actual year-end results. So are there any other questions that I can assist with?
Question, anybody? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Martha, next up, Laura Martel will give an outlook on FY 27.
Good morning.
Morning, good morning.
We are going to talk about the FY 27 budget development process, and we would like your feedback throughout this entire work session to make sure that we get council's perspective as we start to develop this budget.
You think it'd be possible to move that microphone to the side? Get it a little closer. Thank
Okay.
you. I guess. Sing a song.
Can't hear you.
You can speak up a little bit. Okay. All right. All right, here we go. This is the tentative schedule for the FY 27 budget. You can see that we have 5 work sessions scheduled over the course of the development process. These sessions are essential to align your perspective and the community's perspective as we move forward in the development process. The city manager's recommended budget is the first council meeting in May, followed by the public hearing, second meeting in May. And we have adoption in June. To effectively change the FY 27 or to budget the FY 27 budget, it's essential to look at the labor market and the economic trends. You can see that the labor participation rate is trending downward nationally and statewide, indicating fewer people are in the workforce or seeking work. This decline can lead to labor shortages, wage pressures, reduced service levels, and lower consumer spending. Economic or unemployment rates in Wilmington are slightly higher than the state average, but still fall below the national average. Unemployment is also trending upward, which suggests the cooling of the job market as well as slowing down of business activity. Consumer Price Index measures the average change in prices overall. The current year-over-year trend right now is about 3% for all national, state, and local. This leads to purchasing power eroding modestly. Tariffs are increasing input costs, contributing to inflation, reduced competitiveness, and economic strain. The average tariffs rose from 2.4 in the beginning of the year to 11.5 in the summer. Healthcare costs continue to climb. You can hear it on national news, driven by essentially the prescription prices that are going up and the usage of those prescriptions. The city saw an 8% increase in FY 26 that we had the budget, and we expect pressures in FY 27 as well. The wage and housing gap in Wilmington is widening, making housing less affordable, especially for those mid-level skills and service workers. And now I'd like to look at two of the biggest revenues that we have. You've seen this slide almost every time I'm in front of you. This is the 10-year history. And it shows that there's stability in property taxes over time and after every reassessed reevaluation period. Starting from the top going down, the blue bars show natural growth in assessed values. Typically, we see between 1.5% to 3%. Lately, it's been closer to 2% on average the last several years, 2% to 2.5%. The middle value, which is that green dotted line, that represents the total levy. You can see that it remains pretty stable, and the only time we are allowed to really get any increase in beyond the growth is when we do a tax adjustment. And the bottom line is the tax rate and when we did adjust it. Next is sales tax. Everyone knows that this is the most difficult to predict. It's influenced by economy and consumer spending and unprecedented or unexpected events like hurricanes and pandemics. Historically, the city used to collect about 2 to 3% above the state average. Obviously, in the pandemic, everyone saw increased year over year 13%, which was just couldn't be sustainable. But we had all the federal stimulus going in. People were at home spending and fixing their houses, we're assuming. And that growth pretty much ended in FY 23. And that was after we adopted the FY 24 budget. And so you can see on the slide that FY 24 budget, we did not make our budget, which kept FY 25 flat. And then we did a modest increase for FY 26, and we only had one data point come in, and I will get you that number because I can't remember it off the top of my head of where it was above last year. So we will follow up with that. When considering doing the economic or the budget, we look at those economic slides earlier. What? We're missing slides. Yeah. Yeah, it's just out of order. Sorry. We want to look at when we budget things for the FY 27 budget, we undoubtedly will have specific pressures points, and those pressure points relate to the limited revenue growth that I just explained. And the pressures on compensation, benefits, and the operating the costs that we have normally. We also have competitive wages that and the retirement wave that are challenging our employee retention and workforce continuity, especially in the skilled trades and public safety. We are finding employee applicants that are coming in and requesting higher starting pay. This contributes to the regional wage not keeping pace with our economic indicators. Health insurance premiums, as I discussed, we increased those 8% for FY 26, and we expect that same challenge in FY 27. Materials, equipment, and service contracts are increasing, raising the cost of maintaining just our current services overall.
Laura, when talking about, maintaining our workforce and new people coming in with retirements, or is the general workforce affected in the same way as the police and fire with compression?
I might have to turn to Clayton for that.
It's not as bad, but yes, we do still come into depression, especially with, we're struggling to get applicants. So we get one that's qualified, that Ms. Martell mentioned, a lot of times they'll ask for higher salaries and get people in the door. Sometimes that will inevitably create depression.
Thank you.
Steel has increased about 11 to 20%. Aluminum, asphalt, and other construction materials have increased significantly, which is affecting our planned project. A lot of that is being impacted by the tariffs. And then fleet constraints also impacted by tariffs, lightweight and heavy vehicle shortages. We have delays in delivery times. We have extended build times. People are no longer keeping like stock on hand. And so they're having to create or make the vehicles that we have. And then rising prices, we're seeing about 10 to 25% increase in some of our vehicles. And this is all challenging our fleet maintenance division. As we develop the FY 27 budget, we want to focus, or we will continue to focus on making the city an employer of choice through a competitive compensation package, sustaining the services at current levels, and aligning organizational effect or efforts with our strategic strategy. We will incorporate your feedback throughout this work session into the development process. We will bring back in January a real revenue estimate when we have a little bit more to provide you with a projection, and we will collaborate with our departments to assess their needs, ensure that they are aligned with the strategies of the city, and make sure that we identify ways within those limited revenue constraints to make our services affordable. Are there any questions?
I know that in the past several meetings that we've talked about these kinds of things, when it comes to labor availability, we've talked about like people are just not in this sector, like government services sector, including contractors. What are we seeing as far as people being qualified to be in this sector? And that's a pretty nebulous question. I guess what I'm getting at is we've had so many positions that people haven't even applied to, or we've not had applicants who are qualified. I understand that people are saying I can make more money in the private sector, but why are there so few positions for which people are actually qualified?
I don't know how to answer your question. It depends on the position in terms of the number of qualified. So it's a very specialized skill, say CDL drivers, a specialized skill. Because there's very few of those drivers out there. So the pool is just smaller. And there's several reasons why people aren't applying. It could be compensation, being one of those mentioned in the private sector. There are other specialized areas like engineering, for having trouble finding PEs. There's just less of those that are being graduated university and colleges that are out there today. And so it's just, there's a lot of variable factors that are in play with today's economy. There are other positions where we have no trouble finding labor, but it's just certain pockets of the organization, like engineering, public works, police, those are the areas that really struggle to attract talent, mainly because there's less people, but also our compensation that we'll get to in a minute seems to be lagging in some of the regional market.
Okay.
What is your plan to overcome that?
We're going to get to that in just a few moments.
Damn.
I know that compensation is really important, and that's a key part of this, and we need to be committed to investing that. I'm just curious, is there something else we can be doing as far as doing the training ourselves or incentivizing the training?
Correct.
Would like to hear those ideas too.
Yes, we have implemented some, especially for CDL drivers. We have our own CDL training program now, so you can come in without the CDL license, and we'll give you that training, take you to go get your CDL. So we do have some of that. We train our own police officers and firefighters, have our own academies, so we do a lot of. You don't have to have the skills. We'll train you up to get those, but there are certain areas like engineering specifically where you do have to have some experience and licensure coming in. But we have been flexible, and we have been more lenient in some of those requirements where they can come in without their PE and then they'll have to obtain it within 18 months. So we have been flexible in those areas. Thank you.
And this question might be a little premature too, but I know we're in a technology age where we have a lot of mechanisms and things that could accept applications or reject applications. Is that in place for us, or are we actually laying eyes on applications and resumes?
So to answer, yes, we have that technology where we have applicant tracking system where applicants can answer supplemental questions indicating they have certain levels of experience and certifications and those sorts of things. And then the system will automatically screen those for us for the minimum qualifications. But our staff, for example, in public works, we want to put eyes on those applications because we're struggling. We want to make sure that while that applicant might have said they don't have any related experience, what they might think is really, we might view as, hey, we'll take that, just because you don't have experience working out, doing manual labor, your experience working in a factory or doing something might translate. So we are putting eyeballs on those, but our system does have that capability to automatically screen applications.
Right. So in a holistic approach, do you think we're losing some qualified applicants in in the whole, as a whole, like in different departments, could that system be throwing out people that could be really helpful to the city of Wilmington?
Yeah, honestly, yes, it could, but again, because we are trying to put eyeballs on all of those, and we're rewarding departments who are the subject matter experts, all the applications for them to look at, additionally from HR, because again, we have HR, we're looking at what's on the job description. The hiring managers have specific field experience that they'll know what will and will not meet, the requirements for that job.
Okay. Thanks.
I think we can take maybe a 5-minute break.
All right, bring the meeting back to order. I'm gonna have to do another roll call. Mayor Pro Tem's here.
Yes.
Councilman Rambo's here. Councilmember Spears here.
Here.
Councilman Waddell here.
Yep.
Councilman Andrews here.
Here.
Joyner here.
Here.
Chair's here. Everybody's here to count for. We'll turn it back over to our city manager. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. At this time, you will be hearing from our HR Director, Clayton Roberts, as well as myself. We'll be talking about turnover, the state of the workforce, as well as compensation philosophy to start to consider for FY27. Go ahead, Clayton.
All right, so in your packet, there's actually in the very back of the presentation, there's a full detailed report on turnover reasons for leaving. This morning, I'm going to focus on the city overall, but then highlight our 4 largest departments: police, fire, public works, and parks and recreation. So if you're looking for a deeper dive into the data, it is in the back after the end of this presentation. So we're looking at first on the screen is our turnover rate for the last 5 years. FY25 turnover, if you look at the far right, that dark blue bar, we ended at 16.8%, which was above where we ended FY24 by about 1%, having 180 people leave the organization. That is the most we've had in the 5-year period. And over the 5 years, our average turnover rate is around 16.1%. So we did FY25 over that average. Next slide. This chart looks at the classification or reasons why people left the organization. If you look at the far right bar graph for FY25, you'll see that 66.5% of employees who left did so voluntarily for various personal and professional reasons. This is the lowest percentage of voluntary separations in the last 5 years, as we did see an increase in both retirements and involuntary separations last year. For retirements, like I said, an increase up to 21.2%, which is about 38 retirements overall compared to 22 we had the previous year. Involuntary separations accounted for 12.3%, meaning employees who were terminated for performance of policy violations. This too represents the highest level in the past 5 years. Next slide, please. This slide or this chart looks at our new hires, promotions, and separations over the last 3 years. In FY25, we hired 184 employees, represents a slight increase of 3 hires compared to the previous year. Our internal promotions were down from the year. This is primarily due to the timing of our police and fire promotional processes. Council did approve a senior firefighter, a senior police officer, which we implemented in this current fiscal year. So we expect those numbers to increase in FY26. When you look at our separations, this includes retirements, resignations, and terminations. In FY25, our separations increased by 7%, reaching a record high of, I mentioned, 180 employees leaving the organization. Some of this can be contributed to the increased retirements we saw. Like I said, we saw an increase of 16 from the previous year. So overall, when comparing hires and separations, the organization remained flat in FY25 with 184 hires, 180 separations, meaning our vacancy rate remained unchanged in the previous year. So as you'll see on a few slides later, we do continue to struggle with attracting and retaining talent, particularly among our more entry-level, lower wage positions, and myself and Ms. Hawkins will get into that more detail in this presentation. So if you look, I'm going to go now into police and fire, and this is looking at specifically uniformed and sworn turnover in both of those areas. So our fire first, looking at the red bar, they ended FY25 with a turnover rate of 11.7%, which is consistent with last year's rate. Police is the blue bar.
Turnover increased from 11.4 up to 16.5, marking the highest rate in the past 5 years. We'll dig into this in the next slide to understand why people left. So for police, where did they go? Of those that left the WPD, last year, 25 departed for other job opportunities, 44% of all the turnover. 12 retirements. The remaining separations were split among job dissatisfaction, relocation, performance-related, which is involuntary separations and career changes. It's important to note that those that left for other job opportunities went to other local, state, or federal law enforcement agencies who had better compensation.
Clayton, is there any parting interviews with these folks, exit interviews?
We do exit interview surveys with them, yes, and we gather that information. And that's kind of how we found out where they're going and why they're leaving.
But you don't do it face to face.
We do offer face to face.
Okay, thank you.
So next, oh, yes. Mr.
Yeah,
Barnett.
with the folks that are leaving, and you said they left, many of them leave because they get more money,
That's correct. With other local agencies, yep.
and is that is comparative to, like, say, the last 5 years, is this number much higher than it was?
It is much higher than it has been the last 5 years in terms of number of people leaving the agency.
How many sworn officers do we have currently?
I'll get to that in a couple slides. Yes, yes. So if you look at fire reasons for leaving, fire retirements was their number one reason with 11 retirements last year. This is double from what they were the year prior, where they only had 5 retirements. The other reasons for fire are split between relocation, family, another job, medical separations, and career change.
With retirement though, you see that coming. It's not like that all of a sudden creeps up on you. Bam, you got it.
You can, yes, yes.
I will say sometimes, because you have some employees who may retire early. You have some employees who may not retire as soon as they're eligible. They're not obligated to give us notice, but so far in advance. And so we may start to have an idea, but like in the police department, they can receive full retirement with less than 30 years of service. Some still choose to stay until 30, but others, I know we've got some folks who are looking to retire with maybe 22, 25 years of service. And so you end up with a pretty big window of, it's coming at some point, but you don't know exactly when.
With the early retirements for the fire department, Steve, jump in when I'm wrong here. A lot of that has to do with sickness or things that they have picked up.
Some of that's medical. There's 3 on here that are medical or medical related, but yes, there are some that are mixed in.
Thank you.
Looking at public works turnover, they ended FY25 lower than last year at 21.7%, down from an all-time high of last year, which was 29%. So this is a good trend. However, I want to caution the public works does continue to struggle filling its vacancies, especially amongst those entry level and lower wage positions, which we will get into here in a moment. So why is public works, where are they going? The majority of department departures, 10 employees, were due to policy violations that resulted in involuntary separations. Again, this may indicate challenges in recruiting or retaining talent that aligns with the city's expectations and culture. We had 7 individuals due to retirement. That is, again, a large number of public services. The year prior, they had 5. We had 6 employees that left for other jobs. Hiring higher pay while performing similar work. Again, this could suggest that our compensation may be a factor in retaining our skilled staff in the public works department. Looking at parks, this is actually good trend, good news story in parks. Their turnover rate dropped from 23.8% down to 14.3%. This represents the lowest in the past 5 years. When you look at our parks and recreation, why are they leaving? 4 individuals left for another job, so 22% of all turnover. And again, all those individuals leaving for similar jobs that had better pay, compensation. The others you can see were split between relocation, career change, retirements, and performance.
What's your secret, Amy?
We did offer sign-on bonuses for tree trimmers. So our forestry staff is we're at full capacity for our forestry staff. So that was a big help.
When somebody's laid off, it's generally, there's nothing for them to do. Why was somebody laid off?
So that was, we actually, that concessions was what we eliminated this last budget, correct?
Right, so as a budget reduction strategy, our department proposed to eliminate the food and beverage concessions program.
Thank you.
Question.
Can we go back to violation of policy? We had a number of 10 employees that were, I guess, terminated. What were some of those violations?
Some of it has a lot to do with attendance. I would say in public works, recycling the trash, on attendance violations.
Gotta show up.
Safety.
That would be the same in Parks and Recreation as well, on the maintenance side.
All right, so let's look at our department vacancy rate. So this next chart, again, looks at the vacancy rate. This is a snapshot in time. So as you can see, this data was pulled on October the 20th. So we've already had some hires and terminations in that time. But looking at the far right of the chart, the city's overall vacancy rate stands at 10%, which represents 119 vacancies out of, you'll see, 1,191 positions. So this vacancy rate is slightly higher than this time last year when we had 112 vacancies. If you look at the department vacancy rates, the two departments with the highest vacancies are Public Works with 20% vacancy rate, representing 36 positions out of 180. And then Police with a 13.2% vacancy rate, 49 positions out of 371. And Police is actually a little higher, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Again, I'm gonna go back to Ms. Beatty. Good news, the Parks and Rec Department has seen notable improvement, reducing vacancies from 16 last year to just 8 this year. So now let's look into police and fire vacancy rates a little bit more. Our fire department currently showing 26 vacancies across the various ranks. However, we do have 23 recruits that are actively in the fire academy being trained right now. So that'll bring the true vacancy count down to 3 once they complete training. It will still be several months though before those recruits will be deployed to fill our operational gaps. When you look at police, they're reporting 57 sworn vacancies. That represents almost a quarter of all of our sworn positions. We currently have 17 officers either in academy or waiting for the certifications. That results in 40 true vacancies for our sworn positions. Keep in mind, it will again take several months before those in academy can be deployed as they wait to complete their training. Just for some context, the same time last year, we had 24 true vacancies. So we do see a significant increase in that currently.
Now, one of the things that we heard, or I had heard, was that after these guys go through the academy, then they leave here and go and work someplace else.
Yes, we have examples of that where they've left to go work somewhere.
And there's no way we can kind of, if we pay for their training and say to them, you gotta at least work here, we can't do that.
You can't require them to.
I know Steve Zudema in his interviews and what have you. We mentioned that, we brought that up, I believe, I think we did. And he had some very specific ideas about how to overcome that.
So Virginia state statute allows the kind of agreements that you're thinking of. North Carolina does not. So that's the biggest difference.
This to me, this is really not my budget, y'all's budget, but while I'm here, this is the biggest issue affecting the government of the city of Wilmington.
Yep.
Here, here.
And I think it should be on the forefront of the discussion moving forward. We gotta if we are the regional leader, which we are, we gotta stop playing patty cake with all these other municipalities.
Yep.
And money is really the answer there.
Yep, that's coming up in the next slides.
Okay, we're gonna address
So as
that.
part of that, we can still offer the sign-on bonus, but maybe after you go through training, could there be an additional bonus to staying? Or is that, or I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, that's not on there, but that's a good question. So we do have incentives for staying. So if you get a 10% bump when you become sworn. And then after 3 years of the department, you get another 3% bump to you become a senior police officer. So we have incremental increases along the way. But again, and Ms. Hawk will get to this, our compensation is not the top. And so people do leave us for smaller agencies for more money.
What's the amount, the difference in
Well,
the amount?
it's in some upcoming slides.
Okay.
We can show it. But speaking of the recruitment bonus, so there is currently a $25,000 sign-on bonus for certified police officers. It has generated a few applications, but one of the biggest issues that the recruiters are coming into is that's very attractive and that's getting interest, but then they're looking at what is our existing salary after the recruitment bonuses, which would pay out over 2 years. What does that salary look like right now? And we have said, hey, we're going to work on this. You know, we expect it and we hope that it's higher by the time you would be done receiving all of your bonuses in a couple of years. But we, of course, can't guarantee it because that's ultimately a budgetary item. And so folks are saying, well, until that is solid, you know, I would love to come there. That's very attractive. But until that's solid, I'm going to have to stay where I am because I would end up dropping back below where I am in my existing employment. So again, we'll get into those details here.
We're not plowing new ground.
Nope.
This is something that I've
Yep.
struggled with
Yep.
every budget year.
Yep.
When we try to bring everybody up to the market.
Yep. And we'll talk about it.
Okay, next slide. We're gonna look at our public works vacancy rates. They currently have a 20% vacancy rate that represents 36 open positions, which is very similar to this time last year. Stormwater and streets make up the majority of these vacancies, 25 positions between those two divisions. It's important to note that many of these vacancies, or vacant roles fall within our lowest paid job classifications. Whose starting salaries are below 45,000. That includes a lot of our public works operators. And these are folks that operate our mowers, street sweepers, our backcons, pavement equipment, other specialized machinery, as well as our recycling and trash operators. And we have 5 vacancies there. These are the folks that require CDL, that drive the trucks every day, collecting recycling, trash, and yard waste. So these are high skill, in-demand positions, and our continued difficulty attracting candidates may be due to our compensation challenges we talked about, but also some broader shortages of labor that Patel mentioned earlier. Ms. Hawk's going to get to this in a moment, but some of these positions have been vacant for over a year, which underscores our ongoing recruitment challenges. And I just want to point out that staff and council have taken steps to address these issues. With our CDL training program I mentioned earlier, we implemented council approved a career ladder program 10 budget cycles ago. And then you continue to address compensation, although we continue to struggle to keep up with the broader local market.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Clayton, because for the past 5 years, 6 years, every budget season when we have to address vacancies and compensation, I was urging somebody from staff to communicate the fact that we've given raises or we've attempted to narrow the gap between us and other municipalities. But I don't know who in the room said it. It's a game. It's ultimately a game. You know, every time we increase pay rates, other municipalities, other governing bodies, they increased their pay rates as well. What was it? 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we increased the rates for WPD, and the sheriff department came and put a sign out almost in front of WPD saying that they were paying more. I mean, it's definitely a game. And I mean, I don't know the way that we win. But I do know, and I have heard that what it looks like on paper, that is not what it actually is. And a lot of times where people leave our organization to go to other organizations, they're smaller organizations, so they're paid more upfront, but in the long run, they're making less.
Yeah, our package is head and shoulders better than anybody around us, our retirement package.
Right.
But those are details that we did not brag about, that we did not discuss, and that we did not, I'm not gonna say push back, because you know we do want to appease our employees, but I still feel today we were pretty much strong-armed into making the decision that we made. There wasn't really much negotiation on our behalf.
In a lot of cases, a young recruit or a young firefighter, a young policeman, they're not looking down the road at retirement. they're looking at $1,000 more a year. If I go across the river, that's what they're looking at. I don't blame them.
Just to pay the
It's
rent.
human nature.
Well,
Pay the rent.
Yeah.
And if that's what you need to pay the basic bills, then the retirement compensation doesn't help you right now. Well, also keep in mind, I think I heard that a lot of these workers need a CDL and you all have a program. But a CDL license will allow you to go out, purchase your own truck and make way more than the annual minimum that you're paying these people. So this has to be increased, in my opinion. I mean, we're talking about 37,000, 39,000. Again, to Charlie's point, people could not pay their rent or raise a family on this amount.
And you're setting up the talk very well. so
Wonderful
we'll get to that.
transition. Yeah.
We'll get to that in just
Yep.
one moment. I got 2 more slides for you to cover. So this is looking at our parks and rec vacancy rates. Again, they have 8 vacancies. The majority are concentrating in our parks and landscape division. 2 tree trimmers, 3 grounds technicians, and 1 senior grounds tech. Amy, did you see that tree trimmers, both those filled now?
They
Since
are.
today?
Yes, and the horticultural supervisor is also.
It's also filled. Man, yours is better than we're showing here today. Good for you. But again, looking at those grounds techs, and those senior grounds techs, those are roles that again start low, less than 45,000. So again, we're having trouble attracting those roles. So given these staffing challenges and the difficulty in filling positions with starting salaries, we'd like to transition to a broader approach to compensation. I'm going to turn it over to our city manager to walk us through our current comp philosophy, and our approach going forward, unless there's any questions from me.
Okay.
Take it away.
All right, thanks, Clayton. Well, good morning again, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about a living wage philosophy that we will get pulled up here in just a moment. Sure that we. There we go. Okay, well, to give a little bit of a foundation, I think everyone hears the term living wage, but just to set the table to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. So a living wage is the wage level that is necessary to afford a decent standard of living for workers and their families. And that is calculated based on normal working hours, not necessarily having to work a bunch of overtime or work 2 jobs, but what would normal working hours earn you in terms of compensation? A living wage is meant to cover the cost of all of your essentials. That includes housing, food, health, education, and other necessary goods and services. When we think about the fundamental necessity of a living wage, some of you might be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you look at the bottom, this is basically the most foundational things that we need as humans. They're physiological. We need food, we need water, we need warmth, and we need rest. And if you don't have those basic foundational needs, then you're not able to build to achieve any of the items on top of it, including safety, social needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization. So when you translate that into the workplace, physiological needs are really about fair pay, benefits, and the work environment that we are able to create for our employees. We know that we have a lot of frontline employees. These are our first responders. These are those that go out in all weather at all hours to respond to calls for service from our community. That can be emergency-based, that can be routine service-based, but essentially when others might be bundled up warm at home, we have people out working to make sure that our community has what it needs. When you look at the impact of pay on employee satisfaction, that has come up of sort of, how do we create the kind of work environment that makes employees want to stay because they're satisfied? Herzberg's 2-factor principles really looks at job satisfaction, job dissatisfaction. And if you look at the bottom right corner, the base wage and salary and the working conditions, these are considered hygiene factors. And what that means is essentially, this is again, your sort of core foundational work that you need to deliver as an employer in order to have any chance of your employees being satisfied.
If you can meet those, then you have a chance of then making them not only employees, but motivated employees. But you've got to get the bottom right corner in green correct first. And if you're not able to meet the factors in that bottom right corner, then they have a direct impact on decreasing job satisfaction. So it's interesting, the theory is that employees are looking for honest pay for honest work, and they're looking for fair pay for the work that they do. And of course, everybody wants to make as much money as they possibly can, but we understand that there are market conditions that impact everything. But you have to at least meet a sort of base level where they feel like they are being taken care of. Otherwise, it will directly correlate to how dissatisfied they are, which is where we then see people leaving the organization because they are dissatisfied with the pay and the conditions that they are working in. And so they're looking to find that in another organization. So when we look at the key pillars to attract and retain highly qualified staff, a lot of these you look at and you go, of course, this is common sense, but all of these take intentional work by the organization to make sure that we are delivering in all of these areas. When we post a job, we aren't just looking for qualified employees, they're also looking at us. And they're looking at what can you offer me that the next employer down the road can't. And so how do we stand out from our peers in the region, but also how do we stand out across the state or across the country, especially for some of these higher paid positions where you might not have the local talent who has all of the advanced certifications. Ideally we do, but if we don't, then how do we get people's attention to come here? And if you are already here and you can go to Leland or you can go to New Hanover County, or you can go to one of the beach communities or Pender County, wherever the case may be, when they're looking at our job and it says it's a planner, or you can be a planner over at one of these other areas, what is it about us that stands out? And so we really need to be focusing on all 5 of these. We need to make sure that we have a very competitive benefits package, but also what kind of work environment are we creating? What do you experience when you show up to work? That's your supervisors, that's your boss, that's the kind of work that we ask you to do. The work-life balance, we want you to certainly have a full day, but if you're constantly having to pull 60, 80 hours and you can just never catch up, and you can go have a different work-life balance at a different locality, making similar pay, that can drive people to make different decisions. Career development, we talked about career ladders having a direct impact on some of the increased retention that we have seen in some of our departments. We need to continue to look for opportunities for that throughout the organization. But one of the most foundational is compensation. If you're not competitive, you're just not going to get people in the door, and you are not going to get people able to stay if they can get all the training that they need from us, and then somebody nearby is offering something similar, they're going to go. Because at the end of the day, this high achieving culture is really what we are striving to make sure that we are creating and cultivating and then maintaining with our staff. And that is that we are going to be pursuing the strategy and the vision of delivering the highest quality services that we possibly can for our community. We need to focus on leadership and teamwork in order to do that effectively. We want to be aligned and transparent in our processes and systems, making sure that we are as efficient as possible and that we are intensely driving a performance management culture, which means we're recognizing, rewarding, and compensating our employees, but we're also holding them accountable. We're making sure that the expectations are clear and that they are delivering on the job that is expected of them. In order to have all of those things, the bottom right corner, the yellow portion of this is that we're staffed by world-class capability. And again, we're not going to be able to get people in the door to be able to deliver at that level if we're not compensating them as a larger piece of all of our efforts. And just to drive it home a little bit more, best practices of being an employer of choice. I'm not going to go through all of these. If you look at number 7, compensation and benefits, employees want equitable pay, but also examine the total compensation package, including broad benefits. So Councilmember Radenbach, to your point, we have a great benefits package, but the base pay also needs to be a part of that.
Here, here.
So when we look at the business case for a living wage, there's a lot of really good data out there about why this matters and why it does make a difference. Companies that pay a living wage experience benefits for their business, including improved reputation because the service that you're delivering is going to be higher, increased motivation and retention for employees, as well as improved relations between managers and staff. It benefits our organization as well as our employees, and then the people in our community and the associated supply chains. If folks are able to meet their basic needs, then hopefully they're also out there spending money in the community, being an active part of the community, and that benefits everybody. A living wage is also a clear and measurable indicator that the city values our employees and puts them at the center of the services our community expects from them. We cannot do the job that we are expected to do without every single person in this organization. It doesn't matter where they are on the pay scale. It doesn't matter what job they do. We have identified that each and every one of them is needed. Certainly, if the trash doesn't get picked up, we're getting phone calls. If the calls for service aren't answered, people expect them to be. And so when we are dealing with the vacancy rates that we're having, that is also putting additional constraint on our ability to deliver the service that people are looking for. They don't care if we have vacancies. They don't care if people aren't here. They want the same level of service, and it's up to us to get it straight so that we can deliver the level of service that they're expecting.
Well, especially if it were as simple as just deciding that's what we were going to do, we'd raise our tax rate 10 or 15 cents per hundred.
I don't think we need to go up that high, but.
Well, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not like the private side. We have constraints that a
We
lot
do.
of other people do not.
We do, for sure.
How many people in our employ? 1,181?
We've got close to 1,200. We're about
How many of
1,191.
those people do you suggest are living or are working here without a living wage?
Interesting you say that. That's coming. You are on it today. You are on it today.
What happened to Charles?
So one more slide before we get to that. The benefits of establishing and maintaining a living wage philosophy before the city. It establishes a sustainable and equitable wage floor. We believe it will improve employee financial wellness. It will reduce the community need for subsidized housing, increase organizational efficiency, decrease turnover costs, enhance talent attraction and retention, strengthen our organizational reputation as an employer of choice, assist in the creation of a high achieving culture, and ultimately align with council's adopted strategic plan that relates to creating a thriving, inclusive, affordable community, as well as achieving organizational excellence. So let's look at how we currently stack up. We looked at this through a number of different lenses and ultimately landed on looking at the local living wage using area median income. Hopefully AMI is a term that everyone is familiar with, but just in case, AMI represents the midpoint of household incomes in a specific geographic area where half of households earn more and half earn less. AMI is calculated annually by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development based on household size and location. And it does provide a standardized measure of income levels across regions and is often used to determine housing affordability and wage adequacy. In order to qualify for subsidized housing, you have to at most make 80% of AMI for a particular region. But as you have seen with various affordable housing projects that have come before council, 30%, 50%, 60%, 80% AMI are all percentages that you have possibly heard before. So the area median income for a single household, this is one person, a single household, $71,885,000 in this location. That is in our standard area that is calculated based on the housing and urban development analysis. So 80% of AMI, in order to qualify for subsidized housing, you cannot earn more than $60,708 per year. 79% of the positions that we advertise pay below that. 937 of our positions, the starting pay is below 80% AMI. That is 79% of all of our positions. We, of course, don't hire everybody at minimum pay. And then folks who have been with us for some time are hopefully earning pay increases. But even with that, the current number of employees, so this is active today within the city of Wilmington that earn below 80% AMI is 536. That is 51% of our current workforce after you take out vacancies. We have additional unfilled vacancies that are expected to earn below that 80% AMI is an additional 111. When you scale it back to 80% of AMI, which is only $45,531 per year. When you look at the total number of positions that we advertise, 336 of those, or 28%, are advertised with a minimum pay below 60% of AMI. Our current employees who are earning below 60% AMI is 141. That is 13% of our workforce. 60% AMI is considered low income, 80% is considered moderate income. So 141 of our employees based on a single household would be earning what is considered a low income salary. We have an additional unfilled vacancy of 4% or 43 positions that we also expect will earn below 60% AMI.
I'm almost scared to ask this question.
Sure.
Because I looked ahead 3 or 4 pages.
Yep.
Is there any way that we can find out how we stack up with our peer cities on that particular topic?
We could ask for actual salaries of actual employees.
What their AMI is for that region?
Well, so if we use the same region, so if we just pulled from our neighbors right around us, we could get that. Certainly, if we wanted to pull from some of the other communities that we use for salary data, we could do the separate.
I know that doesn't change our dynamics, but it kind of gives you an idea of how you stand.
Sure. And part of this, I will say, is about making a concerted choice to do things differently. And so we'll get to the comparison and sort of the natural effect that we think making this change will have on our competitiveness in the pay scale. What we are wanting to do is to move to a more competitive position through this lens. And so that would inherently lift our salaries up to be higher than a lot of our neighbors. But we believe that that will help us with recruitment and retention. So these are the specific positions that are below a living wage. These are the titles and the number of positions that we have for each of those, as well as the minimum pay. I do want to point out that a living wage is defined as earning less than 60% AMI for the purposes of this conversation. And we do include the list further in your packet of the actual employee title, the years that they have been with the city, and what their exact current pay is, just to show the 141 positions that we're talking about that make less than the $45,000 a year and the amount of time that they have been with the city. In some cases, it is quite notable. The other thing that's important to point out is that AMI is determined based on the size of your household and your total income in your household. So we don't necessarily have data on what somebody else in their household could be earning or how large their household is. But as an example, if somebody is a single parent or perhaps a single income household and they have dependents or they have a spouse that isn't working for whatever reason, then they would actually need to earn more to be considered as earning a living wage. Conversely, they could have somebody who is earning quite a bit more, and so they do not meet this threshold, but that shouldn't come into the equation when we're determining how we set our salaries. So much as from a philosophical basis, if you are a single person who is coming to work here, can you pay your basic bills with what we are able to provide you? And right now, we do believe that the answer is no for a fair number of our students.
Bless you.
So as we look to target the 60% AMI, I do want to be very clear also that that by no means means that anybody earning more than 60% AMI is necessarily super comfortable and has a lot of extra money. But when we do look at the wage structures, Councilman Rivenbark, to your previous comment about, what does the market provide for some of these positions? We feel like aiming for 60% AMI brings us much closer to being able to provide a living wage for as many of our employees as possible, even though it by no means lifts everybody up to a level that they would no longer qualify for subsidized housing. So what we are looking for as we start to build out FY27 and the entire budget process would be proposing a minimum wage for full-time staff of $21.89 an hour, which is $45,531 annually. As noted, that is still considered low to moderate income, but it does ensure that all full-time employees earn at least a living wage as we're looking at it through the 60% AMI viewpoint. It would raise the number of employees earning at least 60% AMI from 87% to 100%. And because it would move the entire pay scale for the whole organization, it would also raise the number of employees who are earning at least 80% AMI from 51% to, we estimate, 72% would then be lifted above 80% AMI. Doing that would establish the city as a market leader for pay in not just our lowest paid positions, but also some of the positions where we have some of the highest levels of vacancy, such as our police officers and our firefighters. So just to compare this to our current compensation philosophy, this was reviewed and I believe adopted by council last year. But the previous compensation philosophy has been to be what we would consider 50th percentile of the competitive market. Basically means that half of our employers around us pay more and half of them pay less. And the competitive market that we use for comparison purposes is there in your packet. It is a combination of our neighbors closest to us, as well as some similar sized cities across the state. So what this leads to when you then apply it to specific positions is mid-range pay. So as you look on the screen, highlighted in yellow is the current starting pay for a police officer. We are currently, once they are certified, at $52,154. As you can see, you can go across the bridge to Leland and make $58,600, and it varies from there. We are losing officers to a number of the locations that you see up on the screen. Similarly, with firefighters, we are right there in the middle of the road. $48,369 is the starting pay for a firefighter. Concord is a little bit higher, but the closest there, Leland, again, $54,600. And when you look at being able to make your monthly bills, when you look at the burdens that they're taking on, even though on paper it looks like a few $1,000s, it really does make a difference in being able to recruit and retain. This does not also take into account the potential workload differences. I would argue that the work that some of our staff are performing in these positions, the call volume is different. The types of calls that they are responding to are different. And so in many ways, we are expecting more and paying less. And so that is very hard when you look at that value proposition to say, come work for us anyways, because we really want you to. There's not a lot of compelling reason, especially when you may be struggling to make the bills, and a couple $100 one way or the other can really make the difference. The type of work that our employees are asked to do is not going to change anytime in the foreseeable future.
Clayton, does Leland, Carolina Beach, and New Hanover County, do they all have academies?
I believe some of them do, Chief Mason might know more about. Do other other agencies have their own academy like we run ours?
Okay, how about police? So there, I mean, it's insanity. And we're doing the same damn thing over and over all these years. And we're just, you know, we provide the education for these other municipalities and county governments. And they have no skin in the game.
And a lot of that comes down to the compensation philosophy that council would like to adopt and then be willing to adhere to. Right now, the known market placement of Wilmington is middle of the road. If we were to adopt this compensation philosophy and move ourselves to the top, and then we are making it very clear, you know, we've had some discussion about it's this race, right? Well, then someone's going to raise it, someone's going to raise it. We basically, you lay down the gauntlet and you say, this is our new philosophy. You can raise it if you want to, but then we're just going to have to raise it again.
That's what's always happened.
Well, I would say that Wilmington, to my knowledge, has never been at the top. We have never been close to the top. But being willing to say, this is where we want to be because of what we expect of our employees and what our residents expect of our employees. And then being willing to stay there and being willing to make it an organizational and a budgetary priority to stay there.
It's easy to say that here in November.
I'm aware. That's why we're starting the conversation in November. Yeah.
Becky,
Go ahead.
so I hear you, right? And we do want to be competitive. But what does it cost us, not only as an organization, but what does it cost us as a city? Because that's not what I'm not hearing that part. And I think it's important.
Next chapter.
So we will continue on to that in the presentation.
Okay.
We have not run direct analysis to give you a total all-in number because today, because it is only November, we're looking for feedback. Does this compensation philosophy make sense to council? Understanding that, here I can move to the next page. If we are currently at $17.38 an hour or $36,150 annually, and to pay somebody 60% AMI, that is a $9,381 annual difference for each employee who is at that rate. And so we understand that is a notable shift in our pay scale. And in order to prevent compression, you have to impact the entire pay scale. And you have to impact every employee who currently works for the city. So we understand that this is a significant investment. I see no way that this would not require a tax increase. But when you look at the vast majority of our employees are public safety workers who are either firefighters, police officers, or public works employees, that is where the money is going. The employees in this room are a tiny minority of the employees who do the work every day, and the vast majority of our employees are on the lower end of these pay scales. And so that is where we are looking to drive the investment in this, because that's where the vast majority of our employees are. So we would be simply looking for feedback from council. And then in January, if there is support for this, we would bring you hard numbers as well as a suggested implementation approach or options for implementation. And so we are not looking for anybody to lock in and say, yes, by gosh, so much as, are you open to us even doing this analysis? Because if the cost just looks too great, we don't want to waste time on this. But we understand that it is a very big change for us, but we feel like it is necessary to be able to compete for the talent that we need to do the work that you all are expecting of us.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. My first is a two-part question. What's the target vacancy rate for the city? And then how quickly would adopting this philosophy get us to that target?
So I will let Clayton answer the target philosophy. We would not implement this if it was approved by council. It would not go into effect until July 1st unless there was a different implementation plan that is not currently budgeted in FY26 that was adopted by council. Have we set an ideal vacancy rate, Clayton?
I would say before COVID, when everything really kind of got crazy, we were around 7-8% vacancy rate on an annual basis. So obviously we'd love to get to those numbers, love to get to 0%. But we know how that's not realistic, but
I will, I don't want to compare, but having been successful in adopting a similar approach with a different organization, we then moved to about a 2% vacancy rate, and we went 18 months without a voluntary resignation. So it drastically changed employees' excitedness to not only come to work for us, but to stay.
Thank you. That's helpful. My second question is what kind of clawback strategies does statute allow for training and signing bonuses and that kind of investment?
So it's very limited. The philosophy that you would typically look to take is if it is mandatory for a job, there would be no clawback. So continuing education, required certifications, that would be something that we would just view as investment into the employee. The only time that I have ever seen successful clawback would be for optional degree programs, essentially tuition reimbursement for a 2 or 4 year degree. And then it is typically prorated over a period of time. So the longer they stay, the more is paid back. A 136 agreement is quite common, but that is another area that we will be looking as our benefits. Right now, we only offer a $1,500 tuition reimbursement amount, which is very low. Moving that up to, say, a $5,000 a year level could notably change employees' ability to pursue additional education, which would then hopefully open them up for promotional opportunities in the future. But if we were to implement that, we would be looking for that strong clawback. But typically that's where it's going to be limited.
Okay, thanks.
I think we've covered everything on this page. And as we just look towards the rationale, just to reiterate what was on the previous screen, it is very difficult to recruit. 78% of our positions have a starting pay that qualifies an applicant for subsidized housing based on their household size. Sorry, I'm not sure where that's coming from. Let alone the low income positions that are below 60% AMI. So we did want to look at specifically the positions that have been particularly hard to fill over the past year or so, and really dating back longer than that in many cases through this lens of AMI. And unsurprisingly, it is the majority of them are the positions that are some of the lowest paid in the organization. So our grounds technicians, recycling and trash truck operators, equipment operators 1 through 3, light and heavy mechanics, tree trimmers, those earning less than 80% AMI, our police officers qualify for subsidized housing based on their starting pay. Equipment operator 4s, which is the most advanced equipment operator, the starting pay is still only $46,000. And planners, the starting pay is below $55,000. But the difficulty in recruiting, as mentioned, is not specifically limited to our lowest income. We do also struggle with some of the advanced positions that require PEs, that require advanced education and training. And a lot of that is just the war for talent. These are small applicant pools to begin with. And so if our starting pay is not competitive, as much as somebody may want the job, whether they are local, they are likely to stay where they are. If they are looking to come from another area, the starting pay is not going to necessarily incent them to be able to come, especially given the cost of housing locally. So if we are able to move forward, we would be looking to ensure that all of our full-time employees earn at least 60% AMI salary of $45,531. That would cause us to realign all of our pay grades and increase all employee pay accordingly. We do believe that this is another way to support City Council's affordable housing goals because it supports equitable compensation. We are essentially reducing some of the community need for the very subsidized housing that we are also trying to fund through other budgetary line items. This would promote workforce stability by enabling employees to live in the communities they serve. We have many, many employees who cannot afford to live close by, who are then commuting in large distances to get to work, and that is additional cost and time and pressure on work-life balance. We do believe that it is important to reposition ourselves as a regional pay leader through this proactive approach. And if there is a nod through continuing budgetary discussions, it would be included in the manager's recommended FY27 budget. But again, we know that we need to get to the nuts and bolts of that in a future discussion in January before we would know whether or not that was going in whole or in part into the FY27 budget. So based on that, the next steps would be to receive your feedback regarding 60% AMI living wage framework. And if council is supportive, we would proceed with the analysis of costs and options to align our compensation structure with a living wage philosophy. Again, understanding that all city pay plans would be adjusted, and then we would apply that to all employee pay to then know what a final budgetary impact would be. One of our only levers for increasing our budget is property tax. And so we would certainly look to be as conservative as possible in keeping costs flat or even reduced wherever we can in the budget, because this would be a primary focus for us. But it is not reasonable to think that we would be able to afford this without some kind of a property tax increase. And then we would present those findings as well as the implementation options to council at your January budget work session, which I believe we scheduled that date last week, and that is early January.
What did the penny generate last year on property tax? Was that 8 million?
Right now it's 3.5 million.
I'm sorry, 3.5.
And how much was that? 1%?
One penny is 3.5 million.
I have a couple of questions. Could we go back to page 14 of the slide? It's titled Living Wage Target 60% AMI. For the difference between what the state considers 60% or what the state considers as the benchmark, and it says that HUD has 2 benchmarks. Why does HUD have 2?
So HUD recognizes both 60% and 80% AMI. So it would not be feasible to try to start a pay structure with the minimum pay being 80% AMI. I would love to do that, but that's a bridge too far and what we would be able to afford.
So I hear us talking a lot about 80 and 60. And so what I'm gleaning from this is that that's from HUD, not because the state's directing us to talk about 80 and 60.
Correct. So what we tried to do was pick a wage amount that is an accepted dollar figure for what is considered affordable and what will qualify somebody for affordable housing or qualify them to be considered low income versus moderate income versus not.
And how often is AMI recalculated? Annually,
Annually.
quarterly? Okay. The only other major point of feedback that I have at this juncture is, yes, I think that, human capital for the cities, obviously our most important resource. It's one of the most important conversations that we have every year, but an important conversation that I feel we continue to put off is capital improvement projects. And so if what I'm hearing is we can only do one thing, we gotta have that conversation too before we decide what the one thing is.
Sure, and thank you for bringing that up, because I want to clarify it. It's not that we can only do one thing, so much as, an area that we would put significant focus in making sure that we can afford. The parallel work that is currently going on is that staff is working on updated, specific cost estimates for all projects that are in our CIP right now, because we don't have good numbers to even start to have a conversation about how does that compare to available dollars? What does that mean? That then may need to be either fully funded, value engineered, kicked to the next round of CIP funding, or if council wants to consider additional dollars to go towards some of those projects, all of that is coming in January as well. So we expect to have the estimates done by the end of this calendar year, which will give them time to prepare that presentation. We thought about trying to bring you that presentation today, but we didn't because without the updated cost estimates, it wouldn't have been a worthwhile conversation to have, because we just would have been coming back saying, oops, never mind, we thought it was 8 million, it's actually 12. So that's coming in January.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right,
Okay,
let me proceed.
we are, you want to take a 5-minute break again? You want to keep going?
Let's roll.
You want to keep going? Okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you. Next up, we have the community survey.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief update on the 2025 community survey results. We are hopeful that the information contained in this presentation, as well as the full report that was included in your packet, will help council in establishing strategic priorities as we're looking at informing our upcoming budget cycle. I'd like to begin by answering some frequently asked questions. There are 2 primary goals of our community survey. The first being the opportunity to gauge public satisfaction and perceived importance of city services. And the second being able to benchmark our citizen satisfaction levels against our peer cities in the Atlantic region and across the country. The methodology employed includes mailing a paper survey packet to a random sampling of households across the city's jurisdiction. Contained in that paper packet is a prepaid return envelope for those who wish to respond to the paper survey, as well as an online response option. Regardless of the method employed, all responses are subject to an address validation, and that protects the integrity of our data sampling. The 2025 margin of error is plus or minus 3.3% at 95% level of confidence. That simply means that we could duplicate this survey multiple times, and 95% of the time we would be within 3.3% of our total population. Our response rate is up 161 participants from the 2023 question for a total of 848 respondents. This equates to a 15% response rate, which indicates that our survey results are statistically valid. Lastly, we are frequently asked about what we do with the information gathered during the community survey, so I wanted to provide a few examples this morning. We are currently in implementation stage of council strategic plan, so we can utilize the community survey to inform staff on how well we are doing with the execution of our strategic plan. We also can utilize it as a checkpoint to ensure that the 5 focus areas that are adopted in council strategic plan, which represent the priorities of the organization, remain relevant to addressing the challenges, needs, and desires of our ever-changing community. We also utilize the community survey information to inform our departmental business plans and the support services and programs that each of our departments provide our community. Lastly, we can utilize this information to inform individual work plans, which are required of all employees across the organization. Similar to historic practice, we have received some variation between the 2023 and 2025 collections. On your screen are the areas that are subject to an improved citizen satisfaction level over the 2023 collection, as well as the percent of that increase. For example, our quality of life in the city is up from a citizen satisfaction perspective, 20.9% from the 2023 collection. These are some additional areas that are also subject to that improved satisfaction rating from our 2023 collection. And again, that respective percent of increase. This slide represents some areas in our community survey that experienced a decline in citizen satisfaction, as well as the percent of that decline. Again, as an example, our curbside recycling services has experienced a decline in citizen satisfaction of 3.4% over our 2023 collection. On your screen are the location of respondents by census block group. As you can see, the 2025 results represent a variety of perspectives. As we go through the next series of slides, I want you to know that we're going to concentrate on the organization's growth over the last 3 survey cycles. As I indicated previously, for those who are interested, the benchmarking information of our Atlantic region and our country is available in the full report. As previously mentioned, the quality of life in our city has experienced an increase in citizen satisfaction from the 2025 collection of 20.7%. But what does that equate to? Currently, based on survey respondents in the 2025 cycle, we have received about a 70% approval rating as either the city is providing a good or excellent quality of life. Areas that also experienced a similar approval rating is our community as a place to visit, live, and retire. When asked about public safety services being provided across our community, our highest levels of citizen satisfaction include the efficiency of city fire department response, quality of fire services, fire department efforts to prevent injuries, property loss, and death, as well as how quickly police respond to emergencies. The area under public safety services that has received the least citizen satisfaction is the frequency that our police officers patrol individual neighborhoods. Running through code enforcement service satisfaction, you will see that the highest citizen satisfaction levels include the enforcement of sign regulations, enforcement of exterior maintenance of commercial properties, and enforcement of mowing and cutting of weeds and grass on private property. Residents respond that the area of least satisfaction with regards to code enforcement services is the enforcement of stormwater drainage pollution regulations.
Next question real quick, on all these negative, on all these categories you've covered, on the negatives, when they were, is there a space for like an explanation?
There is not currently a space for an explanation, but I will say that we reevaluate every 2 years. And if that is something that council is interested in asking of our citizens, it's something that we could pilot in 2027.
I mean, every time we evaluate Becky or Penny or anybody, there's a spot there where we have a, you know, if we should ever think of anything negative, it would be a spot there. And some of these things, I'm curious, like our bike trails and I mean, damn, we're knocking it out of the park. And there's people that are dissatisfied with it. I just like to know what happened to them. And there's others besides that. I just kind of like to see if they do have a 1 sentence.
So what can be difficult is the balance between brevity and the amount of information. If you make the survey too long, then you tend to lose your response rate. So
Satisfied person likes to tell people.
well, correct. But one thing that I've seen communities do is then there are, say, a certain number of areas that are of particular concern, is then go back out and try to do some boots on the ground, additional, more detailed analysis of, obviously this is anonymous, so we can't go back to these individual people. But if this is in fact representative, you should be able to find similar thoughts in the community if you went back out and did some additional surveying.
So
Well,
if there are areas like that.
Dead horse. I'm
Sure.
thinking if somebody had a specific.
Sure.
they Wouldn't have to go out and look at the whole damn.
I know,
town,
yeah, there,
Go to that spot. and see it.
there are definitely some of these where you go, is it lack of understanding or is it an actual concern? How's it all connected? Yeah.
With the mission you have, the better job. you do.
Agreed.
When doing these surveys, do you, list age or gender?
So demographics are part of the household respondent collection. That information is available in your full report that was included in the packet. The average age for the 2025 collection is going to be 35 to 45 age group, which is expected because that is the median age of our community.
Thank you.
Moving into our citizen feedback with regard to communication services, you will see again at the top 3 areas of citizen satisfaction include our city's efforts to keep residents informed about local issues, the variety of ways in which the city communicates information, and the availability of information about city programs and services. The area that has been consistently reported on as the least satisfied aspect of our communication services is our level of public involvement in city decision-making.
So I have a question about this. So, I mean, we're doing relatively well in keeping residents informed about local issues, but then our effectiveness of city communications with the public is a dissatisfaction area. That's
There's a few like
intriguing
that,
to me.
that,
Yeah.
that are,
Contradict one another in direction. And again, this is anonymous, so we don't have the ability to go back and approach individuals and ask them what they were thinking.
Maybe they could write it down.
I think to Charlie's point, is there, I know we can't put a comment section in every one of those, but maybe one at the very end where they can potentially write a paragraph about how they felt.
I mean, we do know that 2 things can be true at the same time, right?
Well, I always heard, I heard it out in San Diego at a waterworks thing. This guy stood up and said, I don't know much about government. I know the 2 things that people don't like, what they got and change. And that's kind of holds true with this.
page 120.
Density and sprawl.
So on page 120 in your packet, there is at least some open response opportunity. So they did have it for.
So question 26 provides another option which would allow for potential write-in feedback.
Yes, and that was related to what are the 3 most significant challenges facing those who live in the city of Wilmington today.
Are there additional questions?
Oh, man, I think that's really-
Okay. Seeing none, another aspect that we inquire about is our customer service citizen satisfaction levels. As you can see, the top 3 include the way that the customer was treated, how easy it was to contact a city employee, as well as the accuracy of the information and assistance provided. With regard to infrastructure services, we have experience receiving the highest level of citizen satisfaction, include the maintenance of city buildings, the condition of street signs and traffic signals, overall appearance of the city, mowing and tree trimming along city streets and public areas. The area that is least satisfied by our resident respondents include the overall management of traffic flow on city streets, which should not come as a surprise. We frequently hear this when we host our public hearings.
I'll tell you something I think is the city or the county should do is however you, this is above my pay grade, but however you would hire a drone operator to film a typical weekday morning from the 5 approaches into Wilmington and what that traffic looks like, and put it on our public TV channel. So this is what's impacting your traffic. Not the people that live within the city, but these are these how many, Bill?
100,000.
Cars a day coming into our city. They don't pay one dime for the upkeep of our infrastructure, but we don't get extra power money for that.
Some work that we've been talking about doing that is pretty low cost is with a demographer that can look at just how many people do come in, basically, what are the commuting patterns into and out of Wilmington, where are people coming from, how many people stay, along with, the impact of the increases in population at the university and how that's impacting housing, how that's impacting traffic, and to help give council some more detailed information and data for you to better understand it, and then to help push it out to the community as well, because a lot of the traffic does not originate from our city limits.
Which is worth 10,000 words.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you for the discussion. It's more engaging, it's better, right? Always. With regards to our utility services citizen satisfaction, the areas that have the highest ranking include residential trash collection services, curbside recycling services, and overall quality of trash recycling and yard waste collection services. The area that's reported as least satisfied service is adequate drainage systems for city streets. When asked about citizen satisfaction with regard to parks and recreation services, the highest areas of citizen satisfaction include the maintenance and appearance of existing city parks, the number of city parks, as well as the outdoor athletic facilities. The area that is least satisfied by our residents, which is another one that we hear of frequently, is our city swimming pools. New to the 2025 survey was an expanded question with regard to satisfaction with housing in our community. The 2 new questions include the variety of housing options currently available in our community, as well as the availability of affordable housing in Wilmington. The numbers speak for themselves. You'll see that our survey respondents suggest that they are either satisfied or very satisfied with the variety of housing 32% of the time. That number further drops to 16% when asked about the availability of affordable housing. The second area that we highlighted some new questions consistent with our 5 key focus areas in the strategic plan include arts and culture. When asked about citizen satisfaction in this particular area, the 3 top highest citizen satisfaction levels include the availability of arts and cultural programs, outdoor concert venues, and the variety of arts and cultural programs offered. The area where citizens are least satisfied includes the availability of youth arts and cultural education programs, specifically areas such as theater, music, and art education. And that concludes staff's formal presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions? What were the dates of the survey? Do you remember? Ballpark.
Great question. Okay, so we had with your initial presentation and came to an agenda briefing and shared that we would be conducting our sampling between the end of August to the end of September. So it was a full month cycle. We partner with ETC on this exercise. ETC, which we have historically partnered with since the beginning. And when the household receives a copy of the paper packet and has yet to respond within 1 week, ETC takes it upon themselves to engage with that household and find out if they received the information or if additional resources are required to adequately respond.
Thank you.
I know over the years listening to political polls and stuff like that, they do a sampling of, X number of people. And to someone who's never studied statistics, talking about myself and how that sampling can equate to the entire community, it's always left me scratching my head. Is that really a true snapshot of what what's out there. And the reason I bring that up, we're doing such a good job now of getting that Wilmington, that report out. If there could be a serrated page on the back of that thing and fold it, or it could just with just comments, wouldn't have to be a full-blown survey, but that'd be a good way to reach some people and see something immediately, what they're dissatisfied with, so you can fix it.
And that's some of what we do. A lot of our departments frequently have some kind of public engagement where they're publicly facing and interacting with the public for a variety of projects that are going on across the organization. And that's really an opportunity to get that real-time feedback and address their concerns. When we are out in the public and we receive something that's not relevant to our department, we report that out to the department that's responsible to ensure that that customer's concerns are adequately addressed in a timely fashion.
I like that idea, Charlie, except, I would probably say instead of having something that you tear off and mail in or drop off, I think maybe a QR code that people could submit a comment that goes out in the Wilmington Current.
And we can certainly look at that. That I think would be an easy add. And we're also looking to implement a more robust online submittal form for requests for service. That often if somebody has a complaint or there's something that they're dissatisfied with, that is a tool that they will use to express whatever their thoughts are. So being able to better get the word out about that once it's up and running could be tied into that effort. Okay, sounds like lunch is almost ready, so we can break and grab the lunch. The only item that we have left is the exercise for you all. So council and mayor, I'll defer to you regarding if you want to grab a full lunch, if you want to eat and then do the exercise, if you want to just take a short break and dive into the exercise, how you want to proceed from here so that we're making it fit for time.
How long is the exercise? That's the least.
It's probably 20 minutes or so, but then a little bit of discussion afterwards. So we've probably got about, 20 to 30 minutes left, or you're free for the day.
Let's knock it out right now.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, so do you want to grab lunch now, or do you want to wait? Do you want to do the exercise now and then eat after?
Can I vote on doing it now and then eat after? He says only 20 minutes, right?
Mayor Pro Tem, damn, you do whatever you want to.
Come on, right? I got the shirt. I got the t-shirt.
Let's go grab a coach and we'll come back. We'll do lunch. Let's break for lunch. All right, I'm gonna call it back into order. We just had lunch. Mayor Pro Tem, are you here?
Yeah.
Councilor Reinmark, you here?
Yes.
Councilmember Spears, you here?
Yep.
Councilmember, I know what else, Anderson now. Councilmember Andrews,
Here.
Councilmember Joyner,
Here.
chairs here. Okay. Turning back over to you.
All right,
All right,
thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, and two of our council members elect. We wanted to end today with a brief strategic exercise that staff will explain how it will work. And the purpose of this is to really just get some high-level feedback and input from you regarding budget prioritization focus as we move forward. In light of some of the information shared today, as well as just your overall preferences for where we may direct some of our additional efforts. So I will turn it back over to Nicole.
Thank you. As I'm sure we are all aware, our city faces many important needs, and unfortunately, we do not have unlimited resources available to comprehensively fund all of those needs. So today's exercise, we hope to gather feedback from council through your priorities exercise. The result of the exercise will help guide and focus the fiscal year 27 budget development, as well as inform staff what matters to you and where you believe the investment should be focused. Keep in mind, there are no right or wrong answers, only your priorities. You'll be given a set of community needs and interests, which should all be in front of you at this point, all of which have value and are competing interests in the day-to-day budget cycle. Your task is to allocate limited dollars among these categories, reflecting what you believe should come first as a priority. Because the total funding is limited, choosing to invest more in one area may jeopardize the available balance to support another area. While you're contemplating where to place your funds, think about what benefits the community the most, both from a short-term and a long-term perspective. Consider both essential services as well as areas that would improve the quality of life. Reflect on your own experiences and what you believe is for the community's future. The instructions are pretty simple. We have 15 funding categories. Again, we're not asking you to remember the categories. You have a handout in front of you, as well as jars on the table to the right of the room, which have been placed in alphabetical order. You also have an envelope in front of you, which should contain $100 total in 3 denominations. You have $40 in $10 bills, $50 in $5 bills, and $10 in $1 bills. We are asking you to allocate your dollars based on your priorities in the jars, giving more money to the categories we believe are most important for the community. Keep in mind, you can spend your funds however you like, but you cannot exceed the $100 in your envelope. The bank is closed. You also have 3 tokens in your envelope, and these represent support for reviewing potential enterprise fund user fees. The 2 white tokens are representative of stormwater areas. One is to look specifically at drainage, and the other is to look at water quality and water resources. The other token is blue and is reflective of your support of reviewing the user fees associated with our RTS enterprise funds. If you support us reviewing the current user fees, you will place your token in the appropriate enterprise jar. If you wish to maintain user fees as are current today, you will keep your token to yourself. The jar are on the blue table to the right of the link.
Wait a minute, I've only got 2 chips.
Look in there.
Yeah, it's probably stuff.
You wanted to be made.
Stop.
That's okay. The spending categories are available on your screen. It should mirror the paper that is in front of you and what you will be able to vote on at the jar. Before I release you to place your votes, we do have a plot twist.
Okay, so the plot twist is that ongoing operations are not something that we can necessarily control. We have contracts that increase in cost. If we're going to do a cost of living or a merit increase for our staff, just the general cost of doing business, like all of us, our bills are going up every year. So if all of you, and no cheating, so I'm gonna go around to each of you, I'm gonna take $20 from each of you. That is going to go into the ongoing operations buckets. And so, yep, $20. And you will then only have $80 to deploy out to consider enhanced services.
Show me one more time what we do with tokens.
Makes that change for each one of those areas. Right to the jar. You're good with this.
Good stuff.
And blue chip is for ongoing, what's each again?
All right, so once again,
That's what it'd
the
be
$80
Someone
are
look at
for
it to
the
change it.
15, 16 categories on the screen to deploy how you would like us to focus on investing our available dollars for any enhanced services. And then the chips, the blue chip is for sanitation and recycling services. If you would like us to review that cost and potentially increase it. And then the white chips are for stormwater, one for water quality management, and then the other one for general stormwater services. And so because those are enterprise funds, we don't want to commingle and have you potentially putting their cash in those buckets because that comes from different revenue.
Right.
So if you want us to not evaluate the fee structure for any of the enterprise funds, keep your chip. Keep your chip. Pretty good.
I do want to give you one last piece of advice. The list that was handed out to you, these are some broad categories. So we wanted to provide some examples of what we were referring to. For example, under neighborhood services, you'll see increased jump in debris removal from residential and commercial areas and enhanced funding for housing remediation programs. This is not an exhaustive list. There are other items that would fall under this particular service category, but we wanted to give some idea as to what we were referring to in broad sense.
Question.
I was about to ask what's employer choice, but is it employer choice, employer of choice, and other writing? That's about the same, right?
The employer of choice that we're referring to in this particular spending category references the living wage presentation that you've heard this morning. You'll also see that under spending category number 6, there is an other. So we understand that our list is obviously not an exhaustive list of services provided by our organization. If you would like to see the funds dedicated to something that is not captured on the screen, please feel free to write that on your dollar and put it in the other jar.
Thanks.
What, number 3, under enhanced funding for housing remediation programs?
Presently, we have 0.67 cents over affordable housing programs. That's probably what the federal government gives us over the entitlement city. That would probably fall into that. We need more of that. So,
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Are we ready to participate?
We don't put our name on the money.
And you can't put any more than 100, what was the limit?
80.
You can only spend the money in your hand, so you are
Okay.
now constrained to $80.
Wherever we want to put it.
Anywhere you would like to establish your priorities.
Hey, I'm gonna study this. So.
Yeah, but feel free to spend some minutes on this.
If you find yourself in a bind and you need change for a 5 or a 10, please come see me.
We do.
That 20 that you took from us, was that already part of number 2?
That is considered the base for number 2. If you want to give us additional cushion, we would happily accept it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, they're not that for.
Playlist that budgets. It's all about money. No money, no problem.
think we should break out of that. Something like that, but to get a house, a job.
Not really relating, they just put a place on and it was next to it, something.
I'm sure that's what we have. You never know.
What's that countdown? Is it Jeopardy? Has that? Yeah, that's what it's like. This would be appropriate for that kind of waiting.
Yeah.
So make sure no one's taking anything out of ongoing operations.
Probably should have took that.
No, guard that.
You know how much is supposed to be.
I know, yeah. Our last count, what we lost one, game two.
You're
Six. So, cause, Penny's playing for Kevin.
Right.
So 6 plus 2, so it'd be 8 times 20, so it should be.
Those mostly more or less those broad areas from the community survey or
And
kind of tracks that and we could plan on what. Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking like neighborhood services and affordable housing should have broken out. So that 0.67 is largely affordable housing, but there could be some neighborhood services. But that's the distinction, neighborhood services that more like code enforcement.
code enforcement, jumping.
Sort of maybe helping people retain their own need maintenance before it falls into the.
Potential replacements of that programs, as they're leaving that.
And then the maintenance of public areas, it's just like it is on the community survey. Essentially, they'll have to interpret what that means. It kind of mean medians and, we got, well, yeah, you're right. So we have parks and, we've got recreation programming. So it could be, like I said, trails, it could be sidewalks. But it's not roads.
You got expansion, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
About training side, or straight. Yeah.
That's right.
We gave it out, that might help. Oh.
Thank you.
Might as well see it.
True.
Good stuff.
Are we done? No, not done. Yeah, but that was no count. I think we need that one right here. It goes to 60 county.
Yeah. I've done the dots.
Yeah.
For stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a game chef.
Looks like everyone's had an opportunity to place their cash in our priority jars. You'll bear with us for a few minutes. We're gonna come up with a calculation to help facilitate the discussion as to if these are truly the priorities moving forward that we should concentrate on as we begin the development of the fiscal year 27 budget. So give us just a few minutes, we'll total up the values and report out.
It's nice, right?
Yeah.
The other right in, that was the last jar. Yeah. See how comprehensive.
Did you use your casino? Your chips.
I understand what you missed. It means the same
You said we were gonna give some money to the YMCA. Where is that? Is that,
We did not say that.
what did we say, we kind of agreed or something? What did we do?
They were pushed to say that it could be potentially looked at in the FY 26 budget, but they have been asked to go through our allocation, like our grant process.
Okay.
But that is a conversation that you need to not have on the lines.
Okay, so,
There's some interest.
okay, so I just want to throw it out, okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, don't anger me talking about the YMCA. You make me angry.
I figured that. For the whole family though.
My company is It's more money, but I don't
Yeah. Actually, this is a.
I don't think so.
You'll get nothing in like.
We'll make do. We always do.
Everybody's always. I obviously Chris, I don't know Texas yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See there?
Whatever.
More than ours.
I know.
Yeah, I'm gonna run.
Somebody
gonna say.
I think I'd put it in the wrong one. New Year's night.
A good push. Awesome seeing on that.
Yeah.
It's about. I was surprised how many kids.
There's also. It's super cool. It's mostly just. My best friend from college. Who's excited me now, but she still has her class, right? For the festival. And so she usually just reads basketball. But she likes it. So we're about a 10-minute walk from. Yeah, most of my college. Go ahead. I have a few that are still. And how many people? You know, wow. That's really good. When you guys see what's for. You do see them, no.
Got really quiet.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
I know. I thought I ate it. You want me to walk you? Oh, it looks like council member Eisenberg wasn't able to, or maybe that was intentional, they didn't put out all the money.
That's right there.
Not sure. Right. Yeah. Okay. All right, we will review this. So this is a real-time counting. We took $160 from you for ongoing operations. One or more of you were gracious enough to give us 10 extra dollars. So thank you for that little bit of extra padding. We appreciate it. The next highest area is affordable housing at $82. Employer of choice is at 70. And then paving and road maintenance at 65. Neighborhood services at 57. Public safety at 52. Fire at 42. Maintenance of public areas at 41. Planning and development incentives code and urban design at 36. Expansion of parks and trails, I believe that should say at 34. Beautification at 31. And then communications, marketing, input and engagement at 25. Parks and recreation programming at 21. Enhancing internal services at 16. Thank you. That one is often overlooked. We appreciate the $16 towards that. And then expansion of arts and culture at 8. In terms of your chips, 7 of the 8 were open to looking at stormwater drainage fees. 6 of the 8 were open to looking at stormwater related to water quality. And 7 of the 8 were open to looking at rates related to trash collection, bulky item pickup, and removal of services. We are happy to open up the floor if anybody wants to talk about their thoughts at seeing this list. Do you think it's reflective of council's priorities? Is there anything that stands out that you put all your money in and nobody else did, and so maybe that's hiding and you want to make sure that we are aware of how impassioned you feel about a particular area? The floor is yours.
Well, if anybody was manipulating it like that, they'd probably want to keep quiet.
Are you trying to tell us something?
No, no.
Councilmember Anders? Okay.
I was pleased to see the amount of money that we put in affordable housing.
Absolutely.
And the related neighborhood services, you know.
Actually, a little bit, shocked. I love that neighborhood services is up there, but I actually thought public safety would have been a little higher.
I think that a lot of the public safety dollars that we want to put in is in the employer of choice category.
I agree.
That was my feeling. And then specifically, they were talking about, enhanced traffic enforcement, expand community policing, strengthen crime prevention. I mean, that's all good. But I think it reflects the level of satisfaction with that and not so much the salaries.
One got a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
Good exercise.
Yeah.
Really like it.
That's good.
Yeah, hats off to our budget department. They put a lot of thought into pulling this together. So appreciate the positive feedback on that. And this is really helpful. Obviously, there are a lot of compelling competing interests, and making sure that we are thoughtful to all of them as we move forward, but looking to perhaps put particular focus on being able to increase and improve the areas that were of particular interest to you all is how we will march forward with additional budget preparations and additional programming and initiatives that we look to bring you through the budget process and in the years to come. So that wraps up everything that staff has prepared for today. Again, we do have a lot coming for you in January related to the employer of choice and the living wage, related to the capital projects and funding for that, as well as taking what we did today with this feedback, and we'll be bringing you additional information. We are also looking for a date in February to be able to hold a planning conference with you all, which will allow a deep dive into some of these areas, such as understanding our paving program and where those dollars actually go and how much is required to just keep roads at a certain standard, let alone try to bring some of them up to standard. Our tree ordinance that we'll be working on, and we'll also be soliciting ideas from you all in terms of subjects and topics that you would like staff to prepare information on, so that we can inform you, and then council is able to have open dialogue and provide staff feedback on where you would like us to go on a lot of the things that we have coming our way that we expect will be before you in the next 12 months.
Becky, when we go into the deep dive with the tree ordinance, I think it's important that we have members of the Department of Transportation, MPO, the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, and any other utility authority or group that's going to be part of that process, as well as stormwater and the regulations in regards to stormwater and any engineering that goes into that, because it has such a significant impact on it, because people perceive you just save the tree, but there's so much more that goes under the ground that affects that tree root. And I think we need to have a much better understanding as to how those impacts affect development.
You're exactly right. And that's the work that would go into preparing the information as well, so that council can have an informed discussion on it.
And then the other thing is on the capital improvement project, I know there's significant numbers there. And are you folks going to prioritize those and bring them to us, or do you want us to prioritize that based on some of the, I'm sure you're going to give us some feedback as to the cost associated with that. I know that bridges cost a heck of a lot more money than road improvements.
So what we would like to do is a prioritization exercise with council to get your feedback on how you would like to see us prioritize it. Having done that before, that's often like a forced ranking exercise where we explain the projects, the costs, the benefits of it, and then council does a forced ranking. But then we can lay that over what the available dollars are. That can then help council see sort of how far can existing dollars go to get your highest priority projects, But then some of the projects that start to fall to a lower priority, what does that mean for them in terms of what is their level of importance to get done in the next few years with our current CIP funding versus moving to the next cycle versus value engineering, pausing altogether. That will be, I think that is important to put in the hands of council. But you'll have up-to-date information in order to be able to do that. But we would look to do that. The force ranking probably for the February planning conference would make more sense. So we can spend January talking about the projects, talking about the budgetary constraints, do the force ranking, and then talk to council about that in February.
Anybody else?
Thank you all.
Good meeting.
See you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
That we stand for.